It could.
Going live. What's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker. This is WPwatercooler, episode number 245. And today's topic is Intro to Managing Change Orders in Your WordPress Project. We talked a little bit about this a couple weeks back regarding project management, and so we thought we would kind of circle back around and kind of focus in directly onto change orders themselves, how you should, especially if this is your first time doing a major WordPress project, and you're like, what the heck's a change order? Is this is the part where I make more money? That's awesome. So before we get into that, let's go around the room real quick.
That is that part.
That is what a beginner would think.
Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I run a company called Simplifilm, which does high-end product demo videos for folks like Ryan Holiday or Ariana Huffington, or we did the Gravity Forms video for those of you in the WordPress space, and been doing that for 6 years, and we have our share of change orders.
Awesome, man. Well,
guys,
thanks for
Chris is awesome. I got to give him a plug. If you need an intro video or a video created, call that guy.
Sweet. Awesome. Thanks for being on. How about you, Dave?
Oh, sorry. My name is Dave Markowski. I'm the project manager for Pixel Jar. We are a web development agency, and we never have change orders.
Say, how about you?
Hi, my name is Say. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, preach WordPress at Say Read Media on all the things. Hello.
Sweet. Thanks for being on. How about you, Steve? You need to sing, though.
Bring it to my level.
I'm Steve Zegan. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup. And we never have change orders either. We call them scope adjustments.
Mm-hmm. Is that scope adjacent?
Semantics. Those are important. Like semantic things.
They're very important.
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter, and my site is jasontucker.blog. We do a bunch of shows on WP Watercooler. Feel free to go take a look at those. We do some stuff on Thursdays as well as on Fridays. So thank you for watching and for hanging out with us. All right, let's talk a little bit about change orders. But you know, we talked about, like I said earlier, we talked about project management earlier on in this. I have a feeling we're going to be dissecting project management for a while now, and kind of just breaking all these pieces down so that folks that are really interested in this stuff can understand it better. So much so that Steve even started up a whole meetup just relating to running a business, doing WordPress type business stuff. Steve, you want to kind of open up in that, and then we can kind of talk a little bit about how change orders tie into it?
Sure. According to Wikipedia, a change order is work that is added to or deleted from the original scope of work of a contract. And I'll just leave that. There's a lot more to it, but I just wanted to define it.
Is that really what Wikipedia says?
It is exactly what Wikipedia says.
Wikipedia is on it.
It is.
I think we don't need to just drop it right
That's
there.
it. All right, we're done. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
I'm out.
Just check Wikipedia if you have questions. It's good.
I'm sorry, Jason. What was the original question?
Well, the way I was looking at this is that, I mean, you've been looking at, you know, business track itself and taking this idea of a business track and turning it into a monthly meetup. I want to talk a little bit about that first, because I know that you're hearing this stuff and you're going to be talking about this sort of stuff next week. So how does that tie into this?
So to answer your question, we added a new meeting every month underneath the OC WordPress umbrella called Business Track. And we did that because a lot of these subjects would come up in the general meetup, in the dev meetup, in the design meetup. And we wanted to dedicate something to just talk about non-technical business related topics. And so Monday's meeting is dedicated to scope creep. So not just change orders, but what happens when the scope of a project increases or changes.
Mm-hmm.
You're such a scope creep.
Your mom's a scope creep.
Actually, my mom does public works project management. She's heavily against scope creep.
So we always
regulate scope creep. It's in my blood.
We always talk about scope creep because it's like a negative thing that can happen on a project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, is it a negative?
Is it a negative?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Go ahead.
Why is that, Chris?
Yeah.
It's because once you're working with a client, you've been working with that client for a long time, you're 100 hours into their project. You're going to understand their business a whole lot better, so your suggestions are going to be better. You're going to be more able to serve your clients later than you were 5 hours into the project. So if you're going to suggest something that's new, you're suggesting it with more credibility and conviction later than you would in the beginning. So it doesn't matter if the change was initiated by you or the client, you're both going to have a higher degree of comfort level working together if you're doing everything correctly.
Now, see, that is what I would expect a Chris answer to be. Right?
Well,
That is
I would
a
like to
perfect
say that
Chris
that,
answer.
that Chris answer was great, except for in the cases if the change order, which coincidentally is our topic, is not actually part of that scope creep. Because if the scope creeps, but no one's documenting, no one's documenting. If a scope creeps in the woods, and no one documents it, is it still scope creep?
Well, so that's basic.
Before you go back there, I want to address Jason's question, which was, is it, or David's question, which is it a negative or positive, right? And I think it depends on your point of view, right? I don't see scope creep as a negative. I don't think anybody on this call, on this Hangout sees scope creep as a negative. Developers see scope creep as a negative.
I see it as a, wait for it, it depends. It can be, I'm sorry.
So
but
surprising.
No, look, it can be a negative. It can be a very negative experience, both for the client and for the developer. But it can also be a really great experience for the client and the developer. The client can get more of what they want. The developer can, get more work. So it could go either way. I think the change order is the linchpin to that. Is that where you're going?
No,
I was going to say that I think that the key is setting up the discussion well before the change happens, right? As long as the client understands what's going to happen when something changes, then it's an easy discussion to have when it occurs. And I think that's the biggest miss.
Are you talking about managing expectations?
It's crazy, I know.
And the best way to do that is to have, for longer projects, is to have a standing call with your clients. You're going to have this routine standing, non-threatening Thursday call for 15 minutes, and you're gonna whatever the
on Thursdays.
It does. If it's not Thursdays, it's gonna create some errors. But you're gonna talk through your deliverables. You're going to confirm that the deliverables are completed. They're going to get an opportunity to confirm or correct what you've done. And then the last thing that's going to happen is if there is new work that they need, we would want to discuss the impact then, and then formalize the business arrangements then. If you do this routinely, when there's no change order, they're not threatened. When and you're just displaying both care and competence, so they're not going to have an issue doing it. If you don't do this, what a lot of people do is they don't prepare to serve their clients appropriately, and then they blame the client when there's a scope creep, which is really ridiculous. It's like a doctor blaming a patient for being sick. It's you're there to fix the problem. Yeah, of course the client's going to want. Of course the client's going to want more stuff, and you would love your client to pay you $1,600 an hour and not really look over your work. Your client would love to have you work for free. We negotiate to meet in the middle, and neither person.
$800 an hour, and you get to look over the shoulder on Thursdays.
That's right. $1,800 an hour to play World of Warcraft.
Jesus, Lord. Yes, 900. I totally. Good.
Well, no, he said I did the math wrong.
Did he say 1,600?
I think he said 1,600. Then he just raised his rates.
Well, you always have to raise your rates.
So here's the thing. I purposely made an overgeneralized stereotypical statement about developers, is that they hate scope creep, because what you're talking about, Chris, is a function typically of a project manager, an account manager, right? Somebody who is on the other side of the business that has that client relationship. And I'm not saying all developers are created equally, but typically a developer thinks very linearly, right? You put them on a path to develop a project, and once you start to change the scope, right, it tends to throw their brain off a little bit. Again, I realize that's very stereotypical, but
no,
in my experience,
they don't get redoing work or changing work that you've already done doesn't give you the release of, I've done something. You don't get that feeling, and designers and developers both hate having the finish line being moved, even if they're getting paid extra, even if other things are happening. The other thing with scope creep that I wanted to say is you've got to talk in terms of clock and calendar. So hours is money to the client, and calendar, if a client makes reverses the plan from the beginning, you have to initiate the conversation that it's not going to just take 3 extra days, but it might have to go to a different developer, or we have to readjust the project expectations if they choose to initiate the change order.
And so the way I like to have that conversation when a change arises is I talk about impact, right? We don't talk about, I don't talk about cost. I don't talk about schedule, just talk about project impact, right? Let's talk about how this is going to impact the entire project, right? And that shapes the, what, yes?
So are those impacts not money and time?
they may not be. They may not be.
Okay.
They may not be, and here's why, right? What we talk about is impact to the project because it helps shape the conversation. It helps the client, my client, understand this is what you're asking for. This is how it's affecting the entire process, right? And if we talk about impact,
you're screwing everything up.
Well, they may be, but before I talk about money and schedule, I really talk about priority, right? How important is this change that you're requesting? So let's talk about this in terms of priority over the other stuff that we're already building. Because if it's a higher priority, right, the impact might be, well, let's take a feature that we're currently building and shift that off to a later phase so that we can still stay on the same schedule without any financial impact. That might be the outcome.
Nice.
Right.
Well, and I have more and more in my work when people come with additional things they want to do because they're getting excited and they're like, oh, what's happening is I work on that, kind of 2.0 list. The iteration concept is like, all right, well, if that doesn't fit into what we're doing here, let's talk about moving that to the next iteration. And I think having that conversation with clients also gets them in the mindset of that it is an iterative process. It's not here's your site, you're driving off the lot, and it's done for the next 6 years.
You're perfect. Yeah.
So getting them trained into that iterative process and saying, okay, well, we can't do it right now. It's like delaying instant gratification. But I think that is a key part of managing expectations.
The wrong thing to do when a client calls you and asks for a change is to start talking about cost immediately, right? In my experience, right? So if a client asks for a change and you respond with, yeah, okay, that's another $5,000, right? It basically, you're really closing off the conversation at that point, right? The better conversation, I think what we're all saying is the better conversation is to really dig in and understand the business purposes behind what they're asking. What are your goals? Right?
I would argue that a lot of developers would use that. Oh, it's $5,000 extra, actually, because they don't want to do that discovery. They don't want to do the project management aspect. So they're like, that's going to be too expensive. It'll be double the cost, and done.
Or another I think negative response is to get a request and just send a change order. Right? Here's your change order. Right.
Why do you want it? When do you want it? You just and all it takes usually is 90 seconds worth of discovery to not look like a dick. That's
that's going to be the name of my new book, I think.
I think that should be
I think you may need a little more time.
but no, I mean, you've just got to cultivate curiosity about your client and their needs. And if you're focused on what you're trying to do, or if they're going to pay you or not, you're working with the wrong clients. And you just say, why is this important? Okay, is this 90 seconds worth of discovery automatic if they want something different?
Well, and I think it has to do with mindset. Like, you have to keep the mindset that you want this project to be the right project for the client. I mean,
so much of this advice mirrors real life. It's like
not only, Chris, are you working with the wrong client, but you're telling your client that they're working with the wrong vendor.
Bingo. Yeah, and you're right. And they'll ask, even if you do it wrong, but if you show that you're concerned for their best interest, they'll forgive you, and you can get past it. If you say the wrong thing and it's crystal clear that you care, then you can survive that. But if you're like, well, that'll be $6,000. Come on, F you, pay me kind of stuff.
and one of the things I've said in my talks at WordCamps in the past is if your conversation is always about price or cost, you're a vendor, period. Right. And once you're a vendor, you're a commodity. If you start digging in and asking about business goals and really talking as a partner, right, you elevate yourself. Right. And that's what I always encourage people to do in my talks is as a developer, as a provider, as a service provider, you should always strive to elevate yourself from vendor to partner. Because once you're a partner, then you can get into the kinds of things that you were saying at the beginning of the call is suggest ideas for your client. And then cost isn't even an issue. It's not even part of the conversation.
Well, Steve, I've even heard you say that you don't even have to have a cost associated with some of these change orders, because it may not even be a change. It may be like, or it's a change that has the same like either time value or monetary value that you can look at and say, you know what, we can do a little trade here. Let's trade between this and this, and be able to kind of move those things around if needed.
Chris Lemma, if he were on the call, would call that horse trading. That's what he labels that.
But is there anything bad with that?
No, not at all. And again, by doing that,
well, specifically, or
well, no, there's plenty of problems with horse trading, but in this context, no. But by doing those trades and by having those conversations, you are acting as a partner, right? You're showing your client that we're on the same team. We all want the same result here, right? And we're helping you think through these things as somebody who's on an equal plane as you, right? We have your best interest in mind.
I think that what you're talking about, it's not just with you elevate yourself, but it's also looking at are these the right clients? I think scope creep comes from clients who want more without paying more. They want you to just continually add on features, or they say things like, I just have a really simple change, or can't you just do this one thing or just show me how to do it and I'll do it. Like all of those things are them essentially trying to get something and get more without compensation.
Well, I don't even know if they're not wanting to pay more. They want more, but a lot of times developers assume they don't want to pay more and don't even ask the question. Is this important to you? Is 10 seconds worth of discovery? Is this important to you? Okay, great. So this if you'll recall, this wasn't in the original request. So let's set up a time on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, and that's the only time you can do it.
Now it's Tuesday. So it was Thursday before. Right. Now it's Thursday. I just filled out my calendar, dude.
So this gets into an interesting question to me. What for you guys? What creates scope creep?
Say it again, Chris.
What creates scope creep? So we have times where we're just revising a project, and we have all other times when we're reversing decisions. Where is the line on what is improving something or delivering something properly? Because there should be some expectation that there's a little bit of miscommunication. We should move towards what the client originally thought. And where's the line for now? It's a change order, or we need to talk impact.
Here's what I do, right? Anytime we identify or we feel that there's a change outside of scope, right? It may not have even been documented, but every time we feel there's a change outside of scope, we point it out. And I point it out this way. Hey, Mr. Client, Miss Client, right? This is what I heard, right? To us, this feels like it's outside of scope. How do you feel about it?
That's such a Californian thing to say.
That's awesome.
But I asked that question because I want to hear their interpretation, and I want to understand their expectations. They may say, you know what, we actually, you contracted to build this feature, and as a normal part of that feature, you would have this would be expected to be in there. And then we can have that conversation as to why or why not our expectations are aligned.
Let me ask a question. If there's a feature that is something that would just require to expand a plugin a little bit more that the client wants, maybe there's an extension or something like that, and they're like, oh, can you do this? And okay, there's this extension, and all we'd have to do is really set that up and kind of fold it in. Would you guys consider that a change order, or would you, just lump it in? I still think it's important to address the change and the fact that you're adding features, you're adding services. So even without additional cost, I think it's still important to mark that and not
So what we do if we're making a change and it's an incidental change, but it takes some time, energy, and effort, we're re-rendering out a video that has a different version for something else, is that we'll mark it as a change order, we'll invoice it, then we'll discount the balance 100%. And that'll at least they'll know that this is being marked. And then we track that each year. So each year about 4% of our revenues go into that discounted markdown category. And that's totally acceptable for me.
A no charge change order is a genius way of managing expectations, right? So if you just document it and send that invoice and say, we've discounted this for you, right? That's actually a good way to do the first change order. As long as it's within reason, do your first change order that way, right? To set the expectation that changes we're
changes have
incurring
impacts. Yeah.
We're incurring time because of this, right? We're not going to charge you for this one, but we may charge you for future ones.
Yeah, or we're not going to charge you for this one. We absolutely value your relationship, so we decided to discount this. And then we don't even have to. They'll infer the rest, and sometimes they'll come to you to pay you more money.
Yep.
But are you telling the client that the second that you're going to be doing that change order, or are you waiting until the next invoice cycle where you're actually telling them, hey, here's,
I'm going to do it the second I do it. I'm going to send the invoice out as soon as I deliver the feature or the change, and I'm going to do it because it's marketing. I mean, we want the marketing benefit of the favor on the production management side, and we want to prepare them for what happens next week. Because what we don't want to do is do the change order for free, and then and wait 30 days to invoice, have the client expect 4 more change orders, and
harbor some feelings.
Yeah, harbor some resentment, and not have the that's right.
I mean, I was joking about the California feelings thing, but honestly, a lot of this conversation is based on feelings. Does the client feel that you are listening and open to change, or do they feel shut out of the process? And I think that really determines what happens at the end of the project when you're handing the keys over, and it's, how does that relationship continue? And even how does the site, grow? Because if the client resents the website itself because of the relationship they had, like a bad child relationship, right? And then they resent this website. And, I hear a ton of horror stories from clients who have a really negative relationship with their previous developer. And that it absolutely translates over into the site. They're like, this is stupid. It doesn't work. They didn't know what they're doing. They weren't listening.
Didn't we have a business idea for you, say, to do digital therapy for sites that have gone bad? Yeah. Where are you on that business? Have you created that yet?
No, I threw out my back. Laying down.
Okay.
I'm on it. I just need to think of a good domain name.
Digital therapy. I'm sure it's probably taken.
Yeah, that is so taken.
Dot XYZ.
Right.
Digitalfair.ap. I think that we can find that somewhere.
So what's good advice for someone who's on the lower end, someone whose projects are smaller? Someone who
that sounded very classist. It's on the lower end.
You're just starting out. I just figured out how to do WordPress. I figured out I could make money doing it, and now I'm building this first website. And this
I believe that all of these things apply no matter the size of the project, right? Because at any size project, you are leaving money on the table if you don't communicate these expectations.
I would argue that it's even more important for a beginner because they don't actually understand necessarily the whole, all the parameters of the relationship, and they don't always understand all the parameters of what they're trying to do with WordPress or what WordPress can do. So having that conversation, maybe the client in that conversation, triggers something like, oh, I saw a plugin that actually does that, because they don't have that just like, oh, here's the plugin that will solve that problem kind of experience.
And there's also a rule of thumb in the services agency, and I hate to say this out loud, but the smaller the budget, the bigger the pain in the ass, right? So
true.
But those small budget projects, those people that let me say this differently. The money is just. I'm just going to dig myself further home.
I need to tweet that with your
that money means a lot more to the individual that's paying it, right? Than larger budget projects, in my experience, right?
Absolutely.
So they're going to be more demanding. They're going to want more for their dollar, and so tracking those changes is more important because of that as well.
And clients. Go ahead.
Communication in that when you're doing that is just everything, and what we do is we tell them we have an onboarding call in the beginning and tell them the difference between a change order and the difference between a revision. So a revision, you get 2 rounds of revisions with every major deliverable with our company, and then a change order is initiated anytime we reverse any decision that we've already confirmed. So that is if we are revising, a reversal is is going to have an impact fee, and if we're just revising it, we can do it. But that means that you might have still had revisions, but you've locked a part of the project to move forward, and that now is locked and will require a change order to open later.
So there's a key account management piece that I want to highlight in your process, right? If a reversal of a decision is a charge, all of those decisions have to be documented throughout the entire process.
to a point. I mean, we don't want to be super pedantic about it and make our customers feel like we're nickeling and diming it, but we will email and say, hey, is this confirmed? And we don't use the word approve ever. That's a fireable offense at our company, because when you say confirmed, it means that you're on the same team and you're confirming that this meets expectations. If you say approve, then you're begging for somebody else's approval, and that's going to be an unattractive thing that's going to put you in revision hell right there.
That is so. This is.
We're changing that.
That is like 30 bags to unpack.
Pretty good.
I love that.
I'm making a note.
And literally, I have let a project manager go for using the word approval, because revision hell is, we made it about 2 years ago, and they kept doing it, and that had to be, preventing revision hell is where we make our money, right? And so we have to use the language correctly.
That's great.
Looking for approval from nobody.
No, we're gonna confirm that that we sold you the right thing. Okay, yeah, it's confirmed. It's a lot easier.
I love that. That's awesome.
That's cool.
And it's a tiny word difference, but it makes a huge impact.
What do you use instead of the submit button? What's your?
Yes. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That gives me apple clicks every time I make a. Yeah.
I approve the changes to this form.
Well,
I am submitting to your will.
So I just hit Command W whenever I see a submit form, because I submit to nobody, but I expect them to submit to me.
I saw that coming. I did see that.
I told you guys Chris was awesome.
I'm gonna go check out your website, and I'm gonna go look at your forms right now.
Sure, you will submit to me, or we won't. Either way is fine.
On your site, all submissions. That's
submissions, yeah, but I will, unfortunately I was, yeah, that's right.
So I think the cool, how in design the kind of trend has moved, thankfully, from a more rigid, here's your Photoshop layout, pixel to pixel situation that's happening. That was very rigid. That was very like, this is set. This is what it's going to look like. And now, I don't want to say like we've moved. There's been a movement too. It's very passive, to the agile design. Whoop. The agile design kind of mindset, which is like, I know, it's great. This is the concept of agile design, so that you've got things that change over time. You have more of like a set that you're working from, as opposed to a really strict kind of rigid form that you're trying to build to. And I think, Chris, kind of the process that you're talking about, and I think kind of the process that this relationship-based conversation is going with, is more of like an agile project management concept, as opposed to this just like there's this one scope and there's change orders, which is much more of the kind of construction, public works, background, where it's like very rigid. And I think technology, I mean, you could have a new plugin come out midway through a project, and you're like, we got to use this plugin or whatever it happens to be. So I think we're moving in that direction, especially in the tech development world, into this kind of agile concept. Let's hug.
Yes.
No, actually, let's not hug. That's how I threw my rib out last week.
You hugged your rib out of place?
I did. I hugged my friend too hard, and I put my arm down, and I was like, oh, just kidding. I threw my rib out. That really happened.
Before we do that,
I've heard of a hug incident.
Chris, go for it.
Just real quick, what percentage of revenue do you guys think that a change order should represent for a normal WordPress consultancy or a beginner?
Ooh,
is that a percentage?
It depends on the.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a should. I think there's I think it's going to depend on your projects, but
that's all based on the work that you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, but like average wise, like we're thinking maybe 6%, 8%, 4%.
No, I think it depends on the change, right?
You mean in total? How much of your
totality is it 10% or 30% of your revenue? I think it's 30%. About. Wow. That's a sign of a healthy business, because that shows that you're looking for solutions for your clients and offering them, and that you've got a good relationship with them. That's my thought.
We're a little bit different, because we do an initial phase and then we move it into maintenance, right? So most of our changes get shifted into the maintenance phase of the project. Right?
And that's iterative, where you're iterating.
Yeah, it's not always, right? So there are change orders that happen during that initial phase, right? But typically it just moves into a later phase.
But Steve, that's because all of your clients are friends, right? That's why, right?
I don't have clients.
Or friends.
Or friends. And with that, folks, that's about it for today. Thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate all of you being able to take some time out to talk a little bit about change orders and how you can do really great stuff with project management.
Come to the business track on Monday night.
Yeah, definitely. If you find yourself in Huntington Beach and you want to go to the business track, feel free to go do that.
Or if you're in Whittier.
Yeah, if you're in Whittier, we do stuff over here as well. So thank you. And go over to our website at WPwatercooler.com. You can click on the link to subscribe. I'm really good at this. I can just keep going and just.
It's awesome.
I was going to talk about the eclipse.
Yeah, there's an eclipse too.
It's a post-eclipse business development meeting.
Oh, there we go. All right, folks. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.